Number 1. I grew up in a house on Long Island, in the town of Brentwood. It was a quiet town for its location. My dad worked as a taxi driver at the time, which meant he would usually end up coming home early in the morning, and I would greet him. So it's Saturday. I'm watching cartoons and my dad comes in and I run to say hello. My mum hears us from the bedroom and says, "Hello honey, don't go in the pool, it's not ready yet." Me and my dad think, well, that's weird, it's 6 a.m. We weren't going to go in the pool. But just brushed it off and he goes on to tell me his usual stories of the crazies he picked up throughout the night. When we realised it was Saturday and my mum was at work and it was only me and him in the house, the voice sounded just like my mother. Fast forward a couple of weeks, we had just moved into the house. My new neighbours came over to welcome us to town. It was the two mothers, two sons, one my age, one a little older in 10th grade. Two little girls, one blonde-haired girl, and a shy brunette that didn't talk. We get to playing some soccer, however, the little brunette girl is nowhere to be found. The curious little kid I was, I ran around the property, and I found her playing in the woods. A dangerous area for little newbilists to be exploring. She asked me to come play tag, but I declined, wanting to get everyone in on the game. The reactions of everyone as I asked for them to join us was puzzling, along with the response from the mum. We only have one daughter. Turns out, a small brown-haired girl drowned in the pool 10 years ago. The mother soon passed away from a heart attack. Number 2. I moved to Montreal and got a new Canadian phone number. Over the next 8 months, I get texts and calls from French people at strange hours of the day, asking for Nina, several times a month. On an April morning, while I was in bed, I get a phone call from a withheld number from some French woman asking for Nina. Apparently, she was the Montreal police, and Nina had been missing for over a year. Number 3. About 2 years ago, my ex and I went through a really nasty breakup. Lots of crying and nasty words said. It became apparent that she had a lot of emotional problems and really wasn't the person I thought she was. Lots of anger and lots of lying, as I discovered. And to make things stranger, she is the one who dumped me multiple times and was absolutely furious when I finally accepted it and told her it was time for her to go. I wasn't exactly perfect here either, but that's what happens. I'd also started a new and healthy relationship at this point, maybe 3 weeks after the primary breakup, which pissed her off to no end. Anyway, she shows up one day to collect some belongings that were still at my place, and she sits me down on the bed and hands me a note, telling me to read it out loud. It's a really nasty speech about how I'm incapable of love, and a terrible person, and deserve to die. I refuse, but she's screaming at me, and I was just fine, I'll read it, if it makes you go away. So I finish the speech, and then she pulls out a load of gum from her purse, and spends the next 15 minutes trying to muster the will to put the trigger and splatter my brain all over the wall. She says she knows the law, she knows she'll be caught, she knows where she'll go to prison, and she's fine with it, because I'll be off this planet. So I spend this time trying not to totally freak out, and with tears streaming down my face, telling her that's not a killer, and just needs to go live her life without me. We parted with a hug, and I just learned she got engaged to a new guy a couple of months ago. Number 4. I once was giving blood at my school's blood drive, so they put the needle in and I passed out. The nurse just happened to leave and I woke up. I wondered why everything was wet. Then I opened my eyes and everything was soaked in my own blood. I screamed, then passed out again. I am never giving blood again. Number 5. About 10 years ago, at the age of 19, I was very good friends with a girl who wasn't interested in paranormal as I was. She bought a Ouija-type board called Psychic Circle. It had words, photos, symbols, and a book that told you how to interpret it. We never had much luck with it. One night, she took it over to her aunt's house and they apparently had a really intense experience with it. Her aunt asked her to leave it for a few nights so she could use it on her own. My friend left it and we made plans to visit her aunt that weekend so we could all play it together. So that Friday night, we head over in hopes of a good supernatural experience. As soon as I got in the car, I just had a feeling of dread. I've had a few brushes with paranormal stuff in the past, and the prospect wasn't frightening me. But I just felt wrong about it. We get to her aunt's house, and her aunt pretty much seems to dislike me the second I walked in the door. The feeling of dread is even more intense once I got to the house. I just sort of brushed it off as paranoia and tried to be friendly. My friend's aunt takes the board out of the box, and it looks old as fuck. Weathered like it had been left in the sun for a few years. The previous bright colours were faded and worn. My friend said, "What happened to the board?" And her aunt told her it had been sweating. So aunt puts it on the table, looking at me with the utmost of suspicion. At this point, I felt absolutely terrified, and my palms were clammy and shaky. I put them on the oracle, and her aunt says, "No." I take them off, and she says, "They don't like you. They don't want to answer your questions. I can just tell." We leave very shortly after that. My friend is upset. She says that the whole episode was very out of character for her aunt. Her aunt refused to give the board back, and I wound up buying my own. No luck with that one either. Took it as a sign and gave it to some other friends. Number 6. I had a stalker for about 2 years. It started at my first apartment when I was 18. He would do little stuff like stand on my porch and tap the windows, or walk around the backyard. I could tell because there was lots of rocks back there that you could hear sloshing around. I called the cops. They checked it out and said they didn't see anyone. Plus, I started tuning it out, just figuring it was a wild animal or passerby since it was a row house and there was loads of neighbours. After about 6 months, me and my boyfriend decided to go see a concert out of town. We left our dogs in the basement and hid the key to the house because my brother would come by a few times a day and let the dogs out. When we got home, things started getting weird. I should mention 3 things. 1. My bedroom had the door to the attic, which was one of those chain locks on it. And 2. The next door apartment was abandoned. And 3. We never went into the attic because it had holes in the floor. At night, we started hearing noises in the attic. It sounded like footsteps, and the dogs would growl at the door all night. We didn't find out what the noises were until we moved out. We went up there to get our Christmas decorations, and someone had broken the brick walls apart that separated the 2 apartments. The other apartment had a bed in the attic, and other miscellaneous stuff. We called the landlord, we called the cops, and we didn't have any more strange things happen until about 4 months into moving into the new place, which is where it gets really bad. My underwear started coming up and missing, and the house would look like it was being rotted through. The bad side of the new house was it didn't lock on the side door, but my boyfriend knew the door shut. I go outside one night to let the dogs out, and there's a guy outside on the road. He starts saying my name over and over again. I go inside and call the cops. Sure enough, he's not there, but now at night I can see him walk up and down the road. One night, my boyfriend has to work until midnight, and my roommate won't be home until 6 a.m, so I'm home alone for 3 hours. Since I'm scared to sleep alone, I lock all the doors, turn on the bathroom light, and turn on the TV and my fan. I also lock the dogs in the room with me. About an hour after falling asleep, I'm awakened by the dogs barking loudly, but it doesn't sound like they are in the room. So I sit up and everything is shut off. My boyfriend walks in the room and informs me that he is home early and not to worry, the power is just out. So I fell back to sleep, until 2 hours later when my boyfriend comes in the room and asks why everything is off. And the dog, one was locked in my room and the other was bleeding. I jumped out of bed and called the cops, at which point I noticed semen on my bed. Number 7. I was sleeping at 3 a.m. in my basement room. Wake up to the sound of someone moaning in agony on the couch. The way my room is let out, I couldn't see him, so I just assumed I was hearing things and tried to go back to sleep. Didn't go away. 5 minutes later, leaned up and saw his legs and shoes. Oh, same as a friend who had been over earlier. Nope. Lean up further. He's Hispanic. My friend is Greek. I sit there for 30 seconds and my first thought is to attack the fellow. I had a 3-inch knife on my nightstand. He hadn't noticed me. Instead, I remember my room locks from the outside. I move, he hears me and chases me out of the room. I get there first and lock him in. I sprint up 2 flights of stairs to wake up my parents, and they just think I'm having a bad dream or something. They walk downstairs, and right as they approach my room, the edge of a 10-pound weight from my room breaks through the door. Oh, there's actually a guy in there. My mum reached for the phone and called 911, while my father went up to the middle floor of the house and drew a broadsword from the mostly decorative suit of armour in the living room and tells me to fetch the cavalry sabre from the umbrella stand. 5 minutes later, police arrive, open the door and arrest the poor fellow, who was drugged out of his mind. Apparently he got in driving through a window. I take sleeping meds so it didn't wake me up when it shattered. They informed us it's technically a citizen's arrest because of the confinement. It's been a few months later and I was diagnosed with PTSD mid-August. The hallucinations or flashbacks are brutal, but the worst part is the shame. You got PTSD from that? Number 8. Around 5 years ago, I'm pretty sure I saw an alien. I was 12 years old and I had just moved to Querétaro, Mexico from the United States with my parents and my brother. Since we didn't have a place to stay, my grandma let us stay at her house for a couple of years before moving out. Anyway, since my grandma's house was in a pretty bad neighbourhood, my mother would park the car in a guarded parking lot about 2 blocks from the house. So every day we would walk 2 blocks at 5 a.m. to get the car out of the parking lot and drive to school. One day we were walking towards the parking lot when all of a sudden my mum stops and tells me to be quiet. Baffled, I ask what's going on. She then proceeds to point at a tree that perhaps 8 to 10 metres away from us. I then see a small pointy-eared figure that would pop his head out from behind the tree, kinda like a little boy teasing us. This was no little boy. It was a small grey creature with big eyes just looking at us. My mum proceeded to grab me by the hand and start walking in another direction. Number 9. Fell asleep in my living room after my parents had left for a date. I was deep asleep when I felt my hair being petted. I thought maybe I just didn't hear my folks come in. Opened my eyes to no one there. Still creeps me the fuck out to this day. Number 10. Not to me, but to my nana, it freaks me out to this day. My nan has a very good friend she has known since her nursery days. Back when they both had their kids and had grown into women, her friend's ex-husband rang up my nan, who was very depressed and needed someone to talk to. But my nan had to say that unfortunately she couldn't go over to see him, as she had just had a newborn. My father was breastfeeding and needed to feed. He said he understood and said, "I'll see you soon." My granddad was on nights at work this time, so she wasn't expecting anyone home or to visit until the next morning. At about 9 p.m. that night, she heard their front gate open. It was a very focal gate. She liked it that way, so that when she was alone, she knew when someone walked up to the house. She assumed that maybe Grandad had been sent home or forgot something, so thought nothing of it. That was until the family dog began sniffing up and growled towards the front door, and nobody opened it. He began to bark. Nan insists he had never been like that. He was a dog that had been brought up around 4 youngsters, placid, patient and kind. She tried to get up to open the door to see if some kids were playing around with her, but she couldn't. She was frozen in her place on the chair. She said she felt icy cold for about 2 minutes. The fire was blaring. Nan describes that after the cold began to fade, she felt very calm and serene, and heard the front gate go once more. In the morning, when Grandad returned home, she explained to him what happened and what time. He told her that he had some terrible news, that her friend's ex-husband had committed suicide at about 8:50 p.m. that evening. It took about 10 minutes walk to my nan's house from his. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment below. All feedback, good or otherwise, is always appreciated. If you have any creepy stories of your own, or have any topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send them in via any of my social media. You can find all links to my social media in the description below. Until next time guys, make sure you lock your doors, stay safe, and I'll see you next video.